All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. This is our Pride Education 2020, our third chat of the series with the Center on Colfax. And we are discussing education equity, equality and equity, rather. And yeah, so my name is Kai Walsh. My pronouns are they, them. I am the founder of Kai Consulting, and I've been working with Fireside. So essentially, Fireside at 5 was created during quarantine to kind of just bring people together and create community, even though we're all in isolation. So yeah, today's chat is going to be really awesome. We have some great people joining us, and I'll let Johnny introduce himself.
Hey everybody, my name's Johnny Humphrey. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Director of Inclusivity Services at the Center on Colfax. So I'm really excited to be a part of this exciting conversation. We've got some amazing panelists with us as well. So with that, shall I go ahead and I'll go through. I could never do justice for who incredible folks you are. So if I could just call your name and if you would share your name, your pronouns, and a little bit about yourself, and kind of we've been saying your why, but what's important about being here today. So, Sister Fred, let's start with you, please.
Thank you very much. So, Sister Fred. So my real name is Frédérique. I was kind of accused of being a boy when I was born and conceived, and so my parents wanted a boy, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, but my name is very masculine. So I'm a quilter as well, and when I started signing my quilts about 15 years ago, I had to find a name, and Fred is my nickname in French, but in English, Fred or something to that extent is not exactly me. So I came up with Sister Fred, and then the name took a life of its own. And so I am Sister Fred, and it's quite official. I'm out of that closet. I'm Dr. Sister Fred to my dear colleagues, and it annoys the hell out of them, and I love it. So anyway, so Sister Fred, and I've been sort of teaching or facilitating the humble understanding and practice of French at the University of Denver for about 30 years. Some of you were born when I started. I love being a teacher because I adore my students, and I just love most of my colleagues. I love to work with them. Being an educator is a privilege. And that's what I've been doing. Talk a little funny because I'm French, but it's okay. You can recover from it, just like you can recover from living in the States, I suppose. Well, anyway, so this is where I am, and I'm so honored to be here. I'm very humbled and so gratified, and by the fact that I have two former students of mine leading the way. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Hey, Thera, how are you? Welcome, welcome.
Hi. Thank you, thank you. I'm Thera Marshall. I am the former Colorado HIV/STI program manager for Planned Parenthood of the Rocky Mountains. Unfortunately, in March, we just completed a 3-year stint with a nonprofit called The Drop. I'm an advocate. I am a journalist by trade. And I'm just excited to be here. And thank you all for giving me the opportunity to put my opinion out into the world.
So happy to have you. Welcome, Gabby. How are you? So happy to have you with us.
I'm great. I'm excited to be here. My name is Gabby. My pronouns are she, her. I am a creative director and image maker. I focus on Black and brown bodies and also the expression of gender and how people kind of walk that line. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be here, and I always really love these kinds of conversations.
Thank you. We're so happy to have you with us. And Hannah, how are you? Welcome.
I'm good, thank you. I'm Hannah. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Currently, I am a legal assistant / paralegal at a civil rights and employment law firm in Denver called Rathod Mohamedbhai LLC. And I'm really loving working there. And then before I graduated from the University of Denver in 2018, and I had a couple roles there in sexual assault advocacy, policy, and prevention. Have done some work beyond that. After graduating, was also in AmeriCorps for a brief stint. And I'm just here to learn. It's a really interesting panel of amazing people. So that's why I'm here.
We're happy to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you all for sharing and introducing yourselves. And yeah, I guess I definitely did forget this. My why the whole reason that I wanted to start this Pride series is just kind of to get people behind, educating themselves and remembering why we're in this fight and what the gay pride movement is, and, what we're fighting for, and recentering the focus on, we still have work to be done. So I want more community for myself selfishly, but I also know that, if I don't have community with a person of privilege, and I guess it's just like, there's a lot of other people out there who probably are feeling the same way. Yeah. So with that said, we can start off with the first question. And I guess from this, I just want to hear from you guys, what was Pride like this month? So obviously everything was virtual, COVID, Black Lives Matter movement, everything has really come together during this month and kind of collided. And, what was your experience? Feel free to just hop in, whoever wants to.
I'm happy to start. So Pride this month for me was just emotionally very draining and very depressing, because of all the protests and constantly being exposed to that, but also kind of cathartic because things have finally been brought to people's attention, but also really frustrating because things that we've been talking about for a long time, people kind of acted like it's finally happening. But on another note, because everything is virtual right now, Pride's taken a new turn. A lot of my sisters, a part of the House of Flora, have just kind of shown like how multifaceted like we as a people really can be. For example, Sister Lily, I had no idea that she was a tech witch. Like she made an entire costume from a 3D printer, and just like showing those kinds of talents I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And really quick, we do have Mo with us now. Hi, Mo. Thank you for joining us.
What's up, everyone?
So we just gave introductions and started on the first question, which I'll repeat back. But if you want to just quickly give, your name, your pronouns, and a little bit about why you're here today and what is important in this conversation for you.
Awesome. So what's up, everyone? My name is Mo, pronouns she and her. And I am the founder of Culture Energized, which is a diversity, inclusion, training and consulting company. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm always having conversations around how we can all be better around diversity and inclusion, and adopting it as not just an initiative, but a lifestyle. And so I do a lot of work around culture and around how are we actually being allies as a lifestyle in our everyday lives, and what does that look like? So I'm really excited to be here, not only for the diversity inclusion lens, but also as a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and just being able to have conversations with you all. So thank you all for having me. And I forgot the first question.
Well, no, thank you for sharing. And so, Gabby just shared, but so this question is, what was Pride Month like for you, with everything colliding during this month and COVID and Black Lives Matter movement, and what was your experience? So with that, I think Thera had something.
Yeah, I think I'm ready. First and foremost, I totally did not give you all my pronouns. I do not have pronouns. I have good intentions. So you can call me he, she, they, them. As long as there's good intentions, I will probably answer you. I also want to give a shout out to my niece, Miss Lily, for doing great things in this world and the House of Flora. So
yes,
Gabby, so happy to see your face. But all in all, Pride for me, I don't know, maybe I'm a Pollyanna, but I've just been very inspired. I've had a lot of things go on in my life in the past couple of months that were fairly tumultuous. So I did go out to the Pride March a couple of weeks ago, and felt just really inspired just to see friends and faces that I know that are on the same path and have the same goals as I do, and also going to the Black Lives Matter marches. So I'm feeling fairly inspired, and I do have a lot of time because I'm jobless at the moment. So there's a lot of things that I've been able to do to contact my friends around the country, and see what they're doing in aspects of promoting the gay agenda, so to speak, and also the Black Lives Matter movement. So just feeling really inspired, but today was a really hard day. I woke up and I'm kind of OCD, so I was like, I got this event tonight, so I'm gonna clean my house, as if you're gonna see my house. And in the process, I turned on the television and I turned on The View because I got to get a little bit of whoopee in my life. And they played about a 20-second snippet of Elijah McClain. And I was in my kitchen doing some dishes. And I just heard him repeatedly, you know, ask for forgiveness and try to move on with his life in this confrontation. And it really just, it took my happiness a step back. You know, because I think sometimes when you do come from a place of privilege, even though I am Black, I have a lot of privilege in my life. And I try to bestow that privilege upon other individuals that look like me, mostly and foremost. But it really just, it set a tone of my day of recognizing that on my best day, it's still not the best day, you know? So I'm just inspired on trying to change some opinions and involve myself in individuals' lives that never would have had my energy in their lives, to teach them something new and different and how to fortify their life with something new and different. So yeah, just feeling really inspired, but with a little tinge of heartbreak.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else who wants, Sister Fred?
Yeah, so, well, okay, so let me talk a little bit about my partner and I were pretty sinful in another life. We were both married to men, and, and we recovered from that. We were both married to men for over 30 years, and we both have grown kids. And then we both figured out later in life who we were, and then we met. So that was about 5 years ago. So usually, you know, I had never gone to a Pride march or festival, as it were. And over the past 5 years, we've done it almost every year to go together and just celebrate and just be part of the happiness around LGBTQ plus. And this year, of course, we didn't go. And in addition, we didn't participate in the demonstrations because we are older. And there was no shame in that, but we are pretty much at risk out there. And so it's been very painful to just sit around. It's painful altogether anyway. Recently, I was, for some reason, I think the person they had in mind was not available. So I was second fiddle, but I was the point person for celebrating Pride. And we had a feature on the online magazine at DU. And I was, you know, I'm glad that because a lot of people read it and reconnected with me, and it seems that it touched a lot of souls, actually. And I was very, very moved by that. But I said, you know, it's hard for me to say I'm celebrating Pride once a year during the month of June. You know, Pride is to be celebrated every day, just like, you know, am I going to say, well, let's celebrate Black history? We ought to do that every day. So we pay particular attention in June or in February or whenever. But we should be thinking about celebrating Pride and certainly working towards better understanding among all of us every single day of our lives. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad it's June. I'm glad when we can go and celebrate. But for me, it's every day. Or it's never, in a way. So anyway, it was kind of a very strange, surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you guys? Any?
I guess I can go. Things have been interesting. Things were really slow at our firm for a really long time, just because people weren't interacting with each other. So not a lot of potential for lawsuits happening. But, you know, we're in the business of civil rights law, and a lot of our cases are police brutality, sexual harassment, racial discrimination. And we were really lucky to get an uptick of potential clients who were protesters at the protests, which has been really awesome. And then we also helped with the bill that passed, the police accountability bill that passed a couple of weeks ago. And we had a couple of clients testify for that bill. The family of Jesse Hernandez, who was a trans teen who was shot by the Aurora PD. And then Zane Atkinson was another one of our clients. He was the African-American male who was in that viral video in Boulder, where the cop almost shot him to death for picking up trash outside of his apartment complex. So that was really awesome to be a part of. I couldn't be there for the testimonies because I was visiting a friend in rural Colorado the next weekend, and I had just gotten COVID tested, and I didn't want to be in the state legislature where there's like no ventilation whatsoever, but it was great to watch on live stream. But that being said, I haven't been to a lot of Pride events, but I've really not enjoyed, but been grateful for the opportunity to reflect on my own internalized racism and to be able to participate in these demonstrations and to be able to be a part of this moment in history and help make history, whether that's by stapling a couple of packets together or sending a few emails. So it's definitely been a Pride month like no other. So.
Yeah, I was just, we have been kind of looking at some of the data. So we, obviously, many of you may know that the center hosted a virtual Pride weekend. So we typically host the event in person, but because of COVID and everything, had to do it virtually. But we had upwards of 350,000 participants that were able to watch and participate over the course of the weekend. And what was exciting for us is that the reach was broader. So if you can't come to Denver to be a part of it, we had so much participation around the world. So that was exciting. Wasn't the same feeling, but it was still, we were able to have an impact and a reach beyond where we would have had we, had it in person. So, and then keeping conversations and activities and things going well beyond that weekend. So it was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And I guess lastly, Mo, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that this was, I didn't necessarily get to really experience Pride this year, which was unfortunate. I had ankle surgery, so I wasn't really able to even go to the protests and be a part of that. So I've kind of had the outside looking in view of watching all the Pride events. Because it also has been challenged just because, especially with all of the protests, there's been a lot of energizing conversations in the workplaces around how do we get diversity inclusion training. So literally June 2nd, everyone was just let's go, we got to get a training. So I've literally just been booked the entire time. But one of the things I really enjoyed this year was that a lot of times when I wanted to go to Pride, Juneteenth was happening at the same time. And so I always felt the need to just especially I think just being here in Colorado and not necessarily always seeing ethnic diversity around, I always just went to Juneteenth, but also it was I'm also missing a part of myself not being able to participate in Pride at the Civic Center. So I think that actually having the virtual event, I think for a lot of us, it was kind of a breath of all right, let's all be able to be in one place and celebrate at one time and actually get to see and interact with different people. So I thought that was really, really powerful. And I think even just the conversations and the protest around underrepresented groups, right? And understanding that there's so many different identities within the LGBT community and actually seeing the underrepresented groups for the first time on a larger scale, people starting to recognize, people starting to protest, people starting to take notice. And I think that out of all of the different years that I've been engaged in Pride, this year has felt a little bit more powerful, we're actually not just celebrating, but we're actually taking action. You know what I mean? Because I think that that's also part of Pride. It's not just a celebration, but it's we are constantly have to be looking around policies, looking around how can we elevate the underrepresented in our LGBT communities, making sure that we are all being treated equally, fairly and in safe environments? Like, how are we speaking up for each other? So I just think that this, even though I think always seeing like the negative side, like all these police shootings and all that kind of stuff, like this year in particular, even though 2020 has been a year, y'all, and we only halfway through, what? But, you know, I think this year is the year that we all needed, where it's like, it's pushed all these issues to the forefront, because everyone's just like, let's do this, but like, but what about this group? Did you know that this group is experiencing this? And so it's just been really powerful to watch, especially not necessarily having the ability to participate in person, but just seeing the power of technology and bringing everybody together.
Mo, you brought up a really important point in that the intersectionality component, and I think specifically within the LGBTQ community, I think too often people tend to think of pride as being white, cisgender, gay, potentially, and that's could be nothing further from the truth. I mean, we represent such rich diversity and different races, nationalities, ability status, age, race, nationality, and so many other things. But yeah, I think it has been challenging in years past, where Juneteenth was right before typically occurring, right before, either days before or the week of Pride. And so it was exciting that we were able to have the virtual Juneteenth events. And I was excited that the center was able to participate in that, which I think was important for us to be present in representing the LGBTQ side of things at that event. But would you and Thera would like to talk about just the difficulty maybe with multiple identities, and then just having to determine perhaps it's sometimes rather to focus on things with the Black and African American community, and then having to look at the queer community, and just that maybe conflicting or different identities that are at conflict maybe at different times.
Well, what I can speak to is I'm always the guy going at it. Like, if there's 5 events, I'm going to try to make it to every single event there possibly is. So in the past years, of course, being the manager of a nonprofit that would be engaged fully into gay pride over the past few years, I had realized that I was not taking my time out to go check out the Juneteenth festivities, which I always enjoyed. My mother is the director of the Juneteenth program back home in Hobbs, New Mexico. She's been doing that for the past 10 years. This year, they also had a virtual situation. So it's always just this fine line of just knowing, like, you can only do so much, but taking those days, I always say, like, one day does not make a year. So Juneteenth is definitely a day of celebration, but I bring Juneteenth on July 4th. I bring it on August 16th. I'm always that individual that is willing to give some historical aspects and knowledge to those individuals that necessarily would not get those things, and not through malicious means, but just not having the outlet to have someone give them those things. So when it comes to events like Gay Pride, I'm always really excited because it has this energy about it, of fun, but I always think about my Blackness in that situation. And when I'm entering those situations, what is my Blackness doing for Gay Pride? And as you know, Johnny, I'm just always that person trying to elevate people of color in any way possible by hiring them, giving them a platform, giving them some dollars when they do something small for me. So it's just always just trying to engage in my Blackness in an unassuming way, because I know that may be off-putting for other individuals that are not Black or a person of color, but I just want people to know that we must uplift each other. And when we do come from a place of privilege, that we must take a step back and set in our privilege and allow someone else to step forward so they can shine for those moments. So that's what I think about both of the holidays in general are great holidays, full of historical references and aspects that we must teach all the time. And if they do coincide on the same day, let's continue the discussion a week later. If you felt like you gave too much to Gay Pride on one weekend, next week, give some Juneteenth some struggle energy. You know what I mean? And I think that's what we have to do, is always just be in the mindset of how can we broaden our allyship. And I always say, in the words of Nevaeh Anderson, our accomplishment. I really am into allies turning into accomplices. I need you all to help us break things down. And therefore the allyship comes into you grabbing a stick too when I have my stick. So yeah, it's always just that push and pull aspects when you have gay pride and Juneteenth in the same area. And maybe there'll be a day that we can really change that when it comes to gay pride here in the city of Denver, because those dates are not set in stone. So I don't know what those policies look like when it comes to the city and things like that, but maybe we can have gay pride one weekend so those individuals can come out and support fully. And then the weekend of Juneteenth, those festivities can go. Because I think queer people need to go there to Juneteenth because we have some issues in the Black community when it comes to queerness. And and the more queer people that are out there showing up and showing out in these events where there are people of color, it just says we're here, we're queer, and you're going to have to get used to it.
Excellent. Any other thoughts specifically about that, about the intersectionality aspects?
I guess on the larger scale, I think one thing that I've really had to recognize is, even though I do have two identities, of course, of being in the LGBT community and being Black, I still have privilege even within that community. And so just understanding that and how to leverage that privilege. Because I think even just in my gender expression, some people are like, well, I don't know. And so, I think that there's definitely times where I can advocate. Sometimes I tend to keep that to myself, especially when I'm, in different spaces where I don't know what the vibe is. But I think that one thing that I've started to learn is actually being proud and not necessarily hiding behind that, I guess, the wall that people see me as. They see me as heterosexual sometimes, and they're just not sure, but actually being more vocal. I think for me during this time, I've always felt oh, I don't need to explain myself and I don't need to share certain things about my life. But even just now, as a trainer, it's so powerful to see that it's not just about my Blackness, but it's also the different layers of me. And that's what I'm bringing to the table. And you never know who's in the room that has been super shy to share that, and how important it is to constantly, if you feel comfortable, constantly be proud and, and share those aspects of yourself. Because I don't think before, I just didn't really think about that. I was just people are just going to see me how they see me, and that should be cool. But I think just now understanding that I do have privilege in the fact that I am in a power position, and being confident and being vocal about who I am and in this space, so others can know that there are multiple identities and you can be whatever you want to be, and you can be a boss if you want to be a boss. So yeah, no, I think that that's just really powerful, because I think a lot of times we focus on the identities that we feel marginalized, but in every single one of us, we all have privilege. So it's important for us to recognize that and to leverage those moments when we can, especially if we are in a place of power or privilege.
I couldn't agree with you more. So the topic obviously is around equality and equity, and those terms can sometimes get conflated. They can maybe sound very similar and mean very many different things. I would just be curious and interested just to hear what your interpretation of those two terms mean and how they impact you personally in your day-to-day life. Would anyone like to jump in? And not to be the Webster dictionary version of it either. We're not interested in that whatsoever, but just how you feel those two words resonate with you and maybe the impacts they have on you personally. Anyone?
I'll try something, because I love words. This is great. And apart from mispronouncing every other term, equity and equality. So in my experience, it seems that Equality reassures those of us who have so much privilege that we don't know what to do with it. And, you know, mostly white folks who feel so bad that there is so much evil going on in the world. And so we're looking for equality. And it seems to me that equity is much more complex than equality. Equality, you know, if we were looking at the proverbial glass, you know, equality is half full, but equity is half empty because it's more complicated to understand. Equity requires humility and compassion and empathy to try and understand what it is like not to have those privileges, those many privileges or privilege in general, and forget about the bootstraps. I hate that expression. I hate boots for that. It doesn't make any damn sense. We all come to this world with different challenges and different privilege. But then there is this systematic or systemic lack of equity that we need to dig further. So to me, we just want to make, we do need to make a difference between the two terms, come to terms with their meanings and not take one for the other. And really equity is the way to go. Equality is not sufficient enough. That's my position.
And I just want to echo what Sister Fred says, is that for me personally, equality, I'm not really worried about. I'm just not something that is on the top of my mind. Oh, I want equity. I want people of color, those disenfranchised communities to have equity because those are resources. And when you have equity, you can demand equality, you know? So that's one of those things. So I thank you for saying that, Sister Fred. I was like, I don't care about equality. When I hear it, like it's one of those words that really just, I kind of roll my eyes. Equal rights. I'm like, no, I don't want equal rights. I want equity. Because when I have equity, I can make you give me equal rights.
And just to bounce off of what Thera was saying, to me, the difference is kind of acculturation versus embracing other people's culture. Like a lot of times when we talk about equality, it has a lot more to do with whitewashing another person's culture. For example, like school segregation, like you rarely ever heard of white kids being bused to Black or brown schools, but you always heard about Black or brown students being bused to those schools. And that affects the Black and brown kids because A, you're the only one there, and B, you also have to wake up a lot earlier just to get to those other communities.
I guess for me, when I read this question, I kind of thought about my experiences in higher education, working in sexual assault prevention and advocacy, and the systems that are in place in higher education to combat and address sexual assault and to help people who have survived sexual assault are by no means equitable right now. And when I was in college 2 years ago, they weren't very equitable at all. But something that I think about is a lot of times with like the policies that are in place, like if you report Title IX to your school, or if you report a sexual assault to your school, you report it to the Office of Title IX, and people think, you know, that easy. Like once you report it, it's easy from there and all of your problems are solved. But like where we really need to be putting the money is like into resources and counseling for survivors, making sure they know where to report for like confidential resources. And then Betsy DeVos, who is the Secretary of Education, just released these horrible policies, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, that just made everything like exponentially more inequitable for people. Like one of the things that they introduced is live hearings, which most schools don't even have enough money for Title IX, like people to staff the Title IX offices and have these investigations, let alone like all of the people necessary for a live hearing. And also they let schools from now on they can either use preponderance of evidence, which is a little less than what we use in the courts, which is great because it's more beneficial for survivors, but now schools can use clear and convincing evidence, which not a lot of survivors have clear and convincing evidence that they've been assaulted. So I think for me, equity, which is what Thera said, is making sure we're giving resources to the people who need it. And you know, with all these issues, recognizing that they're so intersectional. Like sexual assault is such an intersectional issue and affects people of color, Black, brown, and Indigenous people the most, and especially trans people. And that needs to be recognized on all levels.
Yeah, I mean, damn, well said. You know, I think definitely, you know, the intersectionality of everything. You know, we see that with queer identities. You know, racism is a queer issue. You know, recognizing these intersections and then taking it on as our own and being like, hey, by the way, you know, you're a queer person of color. I have your back with my privilege and my power in being white and well, I'm not exactly cisgender, but yeah, I mean, it's just incredible when you recognize that we all have so many commonalities. So yeah, anybody else have thoughts on that? We can move on if not. Yeah. Johnny, would you like to take it?
I have to toggle, so give me 1 second to toggle over. I'm supposed to have 2 computers and I only have one. Well, we were going to, so things that happened this past month, and I forget that we're already in July now, so we're just past Pride Month, but the Supreme Court rulings, there's been two powerful rulings, one around abortion rights, and then of course the Supreme Court ruling on anti-discrimination protections for the LGBTQ community. Just some thoughts about that. One of the things that that came to the top of my mind as we were putting this together is the way the media kind of talked about the Supreme Court ruling specifically around anti-discrimination. And so they said, you know, we're you know, saying a lot about this is a victory for the gay and transgender communities. And I felt that that was a lot of bi-erasure and a lot of focus on just 2 parts of the community that were certainly impacted, and it's so critically important. Of course, the cases themselves represented by 2 gay plaintiffs and then a transgender plaintiff, and so, but also just thinking about, you know, when we see the broadcasts about it, just focusing on gay and trans identities. What are your thoughts? Anyone want to share how you felt about those rulings and just the impact it might have for you, and just some thoughts around that?
Well, I'll just say it's just about damn time, you know. I mean, just in passing, and it's a scandal that we should be doing that now. We should have been doing that all along, and so part of me is so very sad that, okay, finally, it's about time. So yeah, let's move on. Come on. We're wasting a lot of time, actually. And then where is it coming from, and who is rejoicing? Those of us we are rejoicing because we've been fighting all along. But there's so much more rejoicing coming from other folks. That is the important thing. You know, I just love that term, accomplishship. And Thera, you have to tell me who I'm stealing it from again. But this is it. What have we accomplished, you know? And let's continue to accomplish. Thank you.
Yeah, when I heard, you know, working for Planned Parenthood for the past few years, of course, abortion rights, reproductive rights in general are at the top of the list for the work that we do there. I got lucky that I got a little niche project to deal with the queer community and people of color. But I was very, very happy about the abortion aspect of it all going down in the right way. And also very excited about the trans rights going down, gay rights going down. But I'm always waiting for the next ball to drop. You know, it's when they give you something and then, you know, something comes along and some old white man tries to take it away from you. They find a way to do those things. So very, very excited in the moment. You know, it's like when your mom gives you a toy or a present and she says, but you can't play with it right now. You know, it's one of those things where you're just excited that you have it, but you just know like something's gonna come at you and deflate that excitement and happiness. So the fight is still gonna continue when it comes to these issues because hate is determined, you know? Hate is very determined, and we just have to be really focused and not be so excitable that we don't understand that we're still in the fight. There are still ways that they will try to come and sweep those rights up from under us again. I'm always worried about the government in general and the legal system in general giving you something that necessarily is already yours to have, because that means they can just take it away as soon as possible. So I just want us to be always in the fight and, have a cake that one day, but know the next day that we're gonna have to continue that fight, because the next day the hateful people are gonna continue their fight to undermine those things that we've just received as rights for ourselves.
I think a great point that you had right there was, I don't know if you guys have seen Disclosure, the documentary on Netflix, but my God, if you haven't watched it, it's incredible. But what they do say, kind of to back up what you just said, is, they say the more visibility there is for the trans community, the more confidence the community has, and the higher risk they are at for violence or harassment and stuff like that. So I think that's a great point. And I think, Mo, you also were about to chime in.
Yeah, I think even bringing it back to Johnny's point of seeing people struggle trying to even share the good news, you just see such a lack of diversity. Like a lot of the people that are speaking upon the LGBT community, you can tell that they have no one in their circles that are from the LGBT community. And also they probably did not reach out to anyone to even get clarification on how to even deliver this news. And so I think, there's a gap there. And I forget what else I was going to say. I guess also one of the things that I also learned, because I didn't even know that these two were up in the Supreme Court, right? And it's like, you don't know until it's actually like things have already gone down. It's like, okay, cool. This is amazing. But like, why I didn't even know about this even before when I was like voting, right? Like 4 years ago, this should have been a conversation, like all of us together in the LGBT communities coming together and communicating and saying, hey, we need to vote correctly because, our lives are in jeopardy within this 4-year block or this 2-year block. Like, I feel like there's a lot of times even, and that's me on my own lack of education and, but also understanding that like, we have to also know how to play the game and how we vote and how we are communicating these needs and the next issues that are on, these lawmakers' table. Like we need to make sure that we have people that represent our community, or we need to make sure that we are communicating who the allies are, so that when these bills do come past their tables, they are people that are well immersed in our community that will be able to continue to push us forward. So I thought those two aspects of it were really powerful, and it definitely educated me on just like how government works and what do I need to do better to make sure that I am in the know around these issues beforehand.
Just going back to what Mo said, I don't necessarily think that has to do with a lack of education on anyone's part. I think that the government specifically is sneaky with these kinds of things. And it is by design. That's just how it's supposed to work. And it's doing it really well, unfortunately. We did win those two, the abortion bill and the anti-job discrimination bill, but we also lost the right to health care. And there's also a ballot trying to allow homeless shelters to refuse trans youth right now. And that is something that's coming up and something that's also not being spoken about in the media, because once again, this is how things are designed.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see how many people didn't know that the cases were coming up. And I mean, certainly they started reviewing in October, and then there was like, when will it come? When will it come? And, and then not knowing what the outcome was going to be, particularly for the anti-discrimination cases. but yeah, and then it just automatically, then it's what's next. And yeah, we just, right before the Supreme Court ruling on anti-discrimination, we saw the healthcare rights for trans people, you know, being taken away. And then now the discussion around exactly what you just said, Gabby. It's like, you just constantly have to be vigilant and being aware of what things are coming up. And then obviously the Equality Act is critical, and that's something that did get passed through the House. And so making sure that you vote for legislators that support that, so that it can get a vote in the Senate. And so that's, you know, we have senators that are up for election, obviously in the state of Colorado as well. So being very informed on where legislators stand on these issues. And, you know, we just focused on employment. There's so many: housing, public accommodations, healthcare, and so many other areas that the Equality Act will cover and protect, that even more so than just the employment aspects of it. So just definitely have to stay vigilant. One Colorado is great. I want to do a plug for them. As far as the legislative branch, we as an organization can't get, obviously, politics or religion and those types of things. We have to remove ourselves, but that's an organization specifically focused on legislation. Obviously, we're concerned about causes and issues as they relate to the LGBTQ community, but One Colorado is a great resource, and their website's one-colorado.org. So I want to do a plug for them.
Yeah, and just to give another plug to something that we can all utilize, is that you can go to the supremecourt.gov, search for docket, and it will give you actually what cases are coming up. You can actually see when they, and I think they end sessions like in October, so you can get up until October to see when they're supposed to be determining on these cases and when they're going to be taking their breaks. You can see exactly what those cases are, be them queer issues or just issues in general. So I would refer you all to go check out supremecourt.gov and look at the docket that they have there for all the cases that they are handling currently and in the future.
Right on. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that resource. We're going to be linking these resources, adding them to the description on the YouTube video, so you guys can check that out, anyone who's watching. But yeah, thank you for sharing those.
One thing I wanted to say that kind of put things into perspective for me after I saw, especially the LGBTQ Supreme Court ruling, someone had posted that, you know, it's really hard, or we can't be celebrating this huge win for trans people when I think in June there were 3 Black trans women murdered. Remy Fells and Rhiannon Milton were the ones that came to mind for me. And then I think it was a couple days ago in Dallas, Mercy Mack was also murdered. So that, like, I feel like I'm always the Debbie Downer. Like, I'm always doing this to myself. Like, whenever something good happens, like, I immediately am like, okay, but there's more work to do. But really for me, like, those rulings were like, this is great, but there's still like so much work to do there, and a lot that needed to be acknowledged with all of that celebration that was happening.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple, I'm just kind of looking at our clock. So we got about 10 minutes, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, so we start at 5:05. So if you guys are good going at least 5 minutes, for sure.
So just to circle back, so I've got a little, and I'm grateful that Kai's helping me with the feed here so I can see the questions without having to toggle. You know, we talked about equality and equity before, but just in your personal life or professional, how have you been able to make an impact in your own sphere of influence, whether it be in your professional circles, your personal circles, to change people's perspective and try to push for equity, which is what I think we all agree that that's what we really need to focus on? Yeah.
I am very intentional, especially when I'm in a position to hire and bring people on board, to really focus on those people of color, those individuals that necessarily might get overlooked and still have the talent and the qualifications of those things. My team that I worked with, Thera St. Cyr, also known as Family Misdemeanor, Paulie Maldonado, Fabian Molina. I say their names because they're out in this community, and if they're looking for a job and anyone out there is seeing them, these are quality individuals that are doing great things for their community, but they are people of color. And the reason I want to do that is I look at Donald Trump. Donald Trump, who's a rich guy, he's full of crap, but he has the power to bring in the most unworthy individuals into his circle and give them a piece of the pie. So as a person of color, when I'm in a position of power, I'm like, I'm gonna give people a piece of that pie, but they are gonna be worthy of this pie. So I'm always looking to see how I can first and foremost elevate and uplift those people of color voices and ideas in my work. And I also find it like my job to do that. Like, you know, and when I don't see someone getting their just desserts, and I have apple cobbler, I might as well pass one over to my brother or sister in this fight. So one thing that I'm always going to do is always, first and foremost, seek out those people that look like me and identify with my struggle to see how they can be uplifted and uplift me in my work. And I implore everyone out there, and not even people of color, but anyone in a position of power, that if you are dealing with the community at large, you must have a staff that looks like the community. Because not only white people are walking through the doors, not only rich people are walking through the doors. So we must make sure that when we are engaging in communities, that the community looks like those individuals that are working, and those workers look like that community, because that's how things really work. They really work. And then outside of that, those individuals that don't look like that might be able to learn some things that they can press forward to the individuals that do look like them. So that's always my goal, is to elevate those people of color voices and elevate their status, because once again, it's about equity. You know, if we have 5 million white doctors and I have the opportunity to give one Black person a doctoralship, then I'm going to look towards that Black person first and foremost. And that does not make me a bad person, I don't think. That just makes me play the game like everybody else.
So if I may, I'd say I do the exact opposite. I don't want to reproduce. So I'm really looking for, you know, systematically, whoever doesn't look like me, and thinking outside the box. And so, and only recently, you know, age does help. Because after a while, you know, you cannot just, you know, remain that little girl who is trying to do well for everyone and doesn't want to hurt anybody. But I've got to stick my, like I said, my redneck out, and really take, say exactly what is not expected of what I look like. So anyway, just what I wanted to say. And in academia, indeed, there is a lot of room for doing that, an awful lot. And it begins with the gender issue, women doing a lot of service work and never getting the recognition, the recognition. And then young professors coming on board and systematically looking at the room and seeing the representation and the who is not there, and how to give presence to who is not there. So unfortunately, it's very, it happens a lot. Thank you.
All right.
Anyone, I was just gonna ask if anyone else would like to share a thought, because those are really profound thoughts, and I really appreciate the sharing.
Yeah, and this is also just kind of a way to, you know, inform other people on how they can implement more equality and equity within their organizations and their life. So, you know, really, any thoughts anyone has on that?
I would say I've definitely put emphasis on educating around bias and, more importantly, microaggressions. Just because in the day-to-day, you know, a lot of us are not necessarily experiencing, like, you know, overt racism. What really takes a toll on a lot of these marginalized communities are microaggressions. Like, if you can change that, or you can address that, or you can be teachable when you do commit one, I would say that is also a great way to continue to educate yourself on microaggressions, what they are, what they look like, and, you know, how to be a little bit more aware when you are interacting with different communities. Because I feel like now is a time where everyone is reaching out. They're reaching out to people of color, they're reaching out to LGBT communities, and they're not, even though they're well-intentioned, they're not always aware that some of the things that they're saying is either offensive or, even like mispronouncing, or not mispronouncing, but, misgendering people, like all those different things as they try to step outside of their normal social circles. So it's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. It's part of all of our experiences, but it's like, if you could just focus on that and educating yourself on that and trying to eliminate or decrease the amount of microaggressions that you might be exerting to people, I think that would be phenomenal. That'd be great.
I agree, Mo. Yeah, I think that's the most important, and realizing that we all have biases. And the first thing is own it, and then do something about it, and knowing that those biases are what creep up into microaggressions. And so I know a lot of both of our work has to focus on that and owning it first and foremost. Any last thoughts before we go to the next question? Okay. So just wanted to kind of thinking about 2020 overall, and it's been a heck of a start, and we're halfway through, as we mentioned a little earlier. But what does it look like to be an ally or an accomplice in 2020? What are your thoughts?
"2020, allyship and accompliship is all about doing the work, finding someone that contains knowledge that you would never get on your own. I think I don't know if you, I hope you all meet her. Her name is Nevaeh Anderson. She's an amazing, powerful trans woman of color. She has an opinion, and she has the wherewithal. And she's one of those individuals that if you met her and you would say, hey, I just have some questions about your trans experience because I want to be on board. Those simple things like that is what we can do. I think a lot of times we're just not really having conversations with individuals that we should. We say we support them, put up the black fist, we do all these things, but it's really about having conversations. You can't be an ally just because you're okay with gay people. You just can't be. It has to be a lot deeper than that. You have to have the words to defend them correctly when someone comes out of the side of their mouth. We have to teach each other, those ways to communicate the end goals for those individuals. Because I want to speak out of turn for my trans brothers and sisters unless my trans brothers and sisters have given me that knowledge. So I think sometimes just out in the streets, you see someone or you meet someone and they've disclosed their gender to you in some capacity. It's just if you have questions, respectfully ask those questions and tell them your intentions. I'm all about intentions. I live my life with intentions. I know when people have good intentions, I can feel it. I know when those intentions are bad. So it's really about us stepping up to the plate and not always just being like, oh, well, we're in the same gay bar, we're all friends, yay. It's really about taking outside of there and having those one-on-one, those small community conversations about how we can be a collective community. Because once we're all collected, we're all together, that's a powerful damn thing. That's very scary for those outside interests. So we must do that. And that's the work I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to do connective community. Whenever you walk through my doors of my business, I just wanted to make sure that you felt connected to the work that we were doing. So any questions that you had, I always wanted to be open to it. And I might have some crazy questions for you too. And let's not also be above crazy questions, because sometimes crazy questions are just coming from the heart and lack of knowledge and a place of ignorance without malicious intent. So we just have to find those ways to have conversations with individuals that we know about.
I mean, well said for sure. And also I think it's kind of similar to, the way that you introduced yourself earlier. It's, you don't go by pronouns, you go by like intention. And, if you have bad intentions, people can feel that. And when you're open and you approach a question or a statement that you're about to say with an open heart and an open mind, that's when people feel it. And when you feel that, that's that sense of we can really connect right now, and I think that's important. Absolutely. Anyone else?
I've been speaking up a lot. So
Oh,
if anybody else wants to share, I will definitely step back.
We got room for two. You're good.
My thought is a little bit abstract, and it's also connected to the previous question that we were talking about. A lot of what I consider really important as a queer Black woman is self-expression and the right to be who I want to be, how I want to be that person, of course, without hurting anyone else. And so what I ask for people who do want to be allies is to give myself and my brothers and sisters space to hold feelings, to listen, like actually listen, and also know when it is and isn't appropriate to ask certain questions. You know what I mean?
Something that I wanted to say that doesn't relate to this topic whatsoever is that I misspoke, and it's really going to bother me if I don't say this. Jesse Hernandez identified as queer, not trans. I'm so sorry that I made that mistake.
Thanks for correcting yourself. Yeah, right on. And Sister Fred, did you have one thing you wanted to add?
I want to talk about radical storytelling, right? I love to tell I was using the term crucifixions when I was teaching Introduction to Women's Studies. I was systematically crucified by a student who knew much more than I did, but it's the wrong term, and I don't believe in crucifixion. It's not a good thing, and I certainly don't want to be offensive to those of us who, believe in something called crucifixion. But I like to share my when I messed up, my messed up stories. I said the wrong thing, and I recovered from it, and actually I became stronger because of those defeats. And so I think that I can sensitize those of us who need to be a little more sensitive, particularly microaggressions. All the microaggressions in the world are done with the best intentions, or many of them are. And so that's the problem. So storytelling, radical storytelling about, how you messed up and how you recovered, and that's a sign. That's, let's move on. So tell me about your sad stories with a little bit of humor, because we mess up. But we need to pick ourselves up and continue the fight. And that's perhaps what is difficult to do. So, and forgiveness, going back to acknowledging the mess up and just say, okay, please allow yourself to be forgiven by your own self to move on, and then continue the fight, because you're not going to go mea culpa forever. It's not going to serve any purpose. So thank you.
Yeah, and Mo, just wanted to check, did you have any last words to add, or are you good?
I just wanted to echo just what I heard. Don't let the fear of making a mistake keep you from, speaking up and taking action. Being an ally is messy. It's messy because you have to learn. You have to be humbled. You have to be able to listen. You have to be able to be teachable, and you have to make it a lifestyle of, understand that you're going to be making mistakes and be hungry for more, right? If someone calls you out, cool. You can circle back for however long, but you got to come back for more, because we all need everyone to be able to speak up at all times, and not be fearful of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, because we're at a point now where it's just like inaction is part of the problem, and so even any action, even if it's the wrong action or a small microaggression here and there, at least be able to be teachable, and we can move forward, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think you said that really well. It's that feeling of uncomfortableness, that feeling of like, oh my God, I can't believe I just said that, and it's like exactly what Hannah did. Was she circled back, she said, hey, really quick, I just want to address this, and now it's over. And I think that's the most important thing about stumbling and getting back up and saying the wrong thing, and, really accepting the fact that, changing your mind is good. Like, I don't care if you weren't all about gay rights 20 years ago. I mean, I'm not happy about it, but if you've changed your mind now, like, that means more to me. Yeah. So yeah. And, with that said, I think this has been an incredible panel, for
Definitely.
you guys maybe, but definitely for me. Like, this has been incredible hearing everyone speak, and thank you so much for joining. And just really quick, I want to plug everyone. So whoever's watching, in the description, we have the panelists. Check out Fireside at 5 on Instagram, and we've tagged all of the people. Sorry, Sister Fred, I don't know if you have Instagram. Whoever's Instagram it is, I've tagged you. Okay, well, But check out everyone's work, because we're all doing great things. And, especially like Gabby, for example, I came across your account on a random Instagram post, and I saw it and I was like, oh shit, this is really incredible stuff. And I've showed all of my friends, and, let's just support each other and connect with each other after this. And I just want to thank you all again so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been a great experience, and we're so grateful for your insight.
Really appreciate it. All right. Have a good day, guys.
Take care. Happy holiday.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you. We'll be in touch.